Yeah, today's audio is going to be coming in from Canada and from the province of Ontario. And we're going to be dealing with the fourth and final earthquake that I'm going to deal with from the book of Revelation. And we can find this in Revelation chapter 16, verses 13 to 20. And I saw three unclean spirits, like frogs, come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of demons working miracles, which go forth to the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them together of that great day of Yahweh Shaddai. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. For he gathered them together into a place called, in the Hebrew tongue, Armageddon. And the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came out a great voice in the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, It is done. And there were voices, thundering, and lightnings. And there was a great earthquake, such as was since men were upon the earth. So mighty an earthquake, and so great. And the great city was divided into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And great Babylon came into remembrance before Yahweh, to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent, and men blasphemed Yahweh because of the plague of the hail, for the plague thereof was exceedingly great. We now come to the great and mighty earthquake in the book of Revelation. And there is a very clear connection between all of the earthquakes I've mentioned in the series of talks, and the mightiest and greatest earthquake that is about to shake the foundations of the 21st century as we move ever closer and nearer to the end of the 6,000 years of human history, which, because of the fallacious Darwinian revolution interspersed with geological analysis based on a foundation of faulty premises, has relegated the ancient biblical model of a 6,000-year plan to that of myth. This mighty and great earthquake will precede the 6,000-year plan by a few years, and according to my chronological calculations will occur well before the year 2032, which is the official termination point of that 6,000-year period. Soon the household of faith will be gathered as a cloud of witnesses to visit the judgment seat of the Messiah in a remote location in upper southern, in northern Saudi Arabia, which was originally near the residence of Moses' father-in-law Jethro, and is where a rather middle-aged Moses, at the age of 80, looked towards a burning bush and returned to Egypt as a reluctant servant of Yahweh to bring down the mightiest superpower in the world and the most sophisticated civilization in world history at that time. This occurred precisely at Passover in the year 1487 BCE. Moses was the agent who would bring the Israelites out of Egypt, and the prayers of the Israelites could be found written in mining caves in the Sinai Peninsula, which some had to work for before this time of 1487. Moses would ultimately bring the Israelites to this mountain. Elijah the Tishbite would also visit the site, and Paul would study at the site before returning to become an apostle to the Gentiles. This will be the secret site of the first judgment, and I suspect there will be only about 200,000 living believers at the site, along with about 50 million people resurrected from the time of Abel to those few who have perished as recently as the year 2011. Only a proportion of this group will be successful in ultimately winning the prize and make up the 144,000. The 144,000 is a code which consists of the people in the 12 tribes of Israel and also in the group of individual Gentiles who will be grafted into this 12 tribes. Thus, 12 times 12 times 1,000 equals 144,000. This number then consists of Jews and Gentiles developed over the 6,000 years plus the 1,000 years, and that's how you come to the conclusion of the 144,000. The French Revolution, which brought forth our modern age, will soon be swallowed up by the fourth earthquake, which will bring forward the millennium and will be named the Messianic Age. It is only fitting that the French Revolution, which kick-started the modern age, will also play a role in kick-starting the millennial age. This is an odd and eerie pattern in Scripture, and sometimes in history, where, for instance, Romulus was the mythical leader who started Rome, and ironically, it was another Romulus who was the last leader of Rome. This can be found in the Transfiguration, where Moses and Elijah and the Messiah will be united with those disciples at the same site. The Messiah is judge over the dead and living, represented by Moses and Elijah, who also represented the law and the prophets. Gomer, which represents France along with several other European nations, is one of the European nations which sends a representative army to assist Russia, Libya, Ethiopia, and Iran, and likely Syria, Lebanon, and the Palestinians to settle the controversy of Zion. The Persian Gulf War under the Bush senior administration to free Kuwait from the clutches of Saddam Hussein is a likely model if what is to transpire, and Israel will be in Iraq's position. The Israelites will be forced by world opinion to divide their state further with the Palestinians or face the consequences. The United States, which has been a staunch supporter of the Israelites, will be condemning the invasion of the Holy Land at the United Nations in New York, where outside that building, ironically, the prophecy of Isaiah stands, which indicates the nations of the world shall turn their swords into plowshares, and nation shall not rise up against nation, nor learn war any more. President Obama, or another president in power at that time, will say, "Are you coming to take a spoil?" During this critical period, similar to the Yom Kippur War, where the Soviet Union appeared ready to intervene in the conflict, but were stopped cold by the nuclear alert executed by the Nixon-Kissinger administration in the United States. Very possibly under the Obama administration, the United States will send ships to the Mediterranean Sea to dissuade the Russians and Europeans and Africans and Middle East nations to settle this quarrel differently. However, these ships shall be broken by an east wind, which will bring down the antitypical ships of Tarshish, which may also be partly British, Canadian, and possibly Australia. In this way, like the Messiah's counterpoint, David, he would slay the lion power first, in taking any credit that the United States would take in this rescue mission. After the Russians and their allies have smashed much of the Jewish state and stacked up the casualty figures, the Messiah will intervene, and 5/6 of the Russian military forces will have been destroyed on the mountains of Israel. It will be in this manner that the bear power will come to its end, and the Messiah will have succeeded in crossing off the second creature that the antitypical David had killed. Many years later, the Russian survivors, according to the prophecy of Zechariah, and other military survivors will visit Jerusalem. Zechariah 14:16 states, "And it shall come to pass that everyone who is left off of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the fall feast of tabernacles." It may be 50 years later that these former warriors visit Israel. It will be at this time that one of the Israelites notices that the Israelite hero has some strange wounds in his hands, and he will ask him, "Where did you get these wounds?" And the Messiah will reply, "In the house of my friends." It will be at that time that there will be a national period of mourning throughout the nation of Israel, and they will come to realize, for perhaps the first time in their history, who their true Messiah was. For the Messiah and those who have died in this conflict, they will mourn. It would appear that once the modern-day Israelites see the physical evidence, that their blindness will be removed once and for all, and it will now be the turn of the rest of the world to be blind. I believe that Elijah will be sent out at this time to bring back the 8 million Jews in the diaspora, 5 million plus living in the United States. There are currently 14 million Jews in the world. At the time of the fourth earthquake, there will be only 10 million living after the Russian invasion. I'm not certain how many of the 8 million Jews will be allowed to live in the Holy Land. Approximately 5 million Jews still live in the United States. Half of these Jews live in New York and Los Angeles. 491,000 live in France, and 375,000 live in Canada, mostly Toronto and Montreal. 297,000 live in the United Kingdom, and only 228,000 live in Russia. It will take the remainder of this century to bring about all the spectacular changes that must take place. Constantine's earthquake brought pseudo-Christianity into the world. The Messiah's earthquake, by the end of the 21st century, will change the minds of the surviving 2 billion pseudo-Christians, the surviving 1.6 billion Muslims, the surviving 950 million Hindus, the surviving 600 million Buddhists, and the surviving 25 million Sikhs. This revolution will be the end of the multi-religious experiment. It will take 50 to 70 years to effect these changes. The Julian earthquake, which tried to revitalize the pagan empire, will appear when the papacy, which is currently sitting on the smallest real estate in the world, calls the Messiah, the Antichrist, and stirs the mighty Goliath to awaken, to prop up the Catholic system. In this century, Rome, the antitypical Babylon, will pay for the slaughter of the saints over the past 17 centuries of history. Rome will call upon the European nations to destroy Israel. If John Thomas's analysis is correct, this conflict will consume 30 years and will result in horrendous casualties, primarily on the European side. This conflict will be the last military engagement of the Messiah before the fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy, which we already covered earlier. The Messianic Revolution, unlike the French Revolution, will install kings and priests in the nations of the world as they are conquered. The final installations will occur in the European theater when Goliath is, in fact, destroyed. For 1,000 glorious years, the adversary, human nature, will be contained, only to be let loose a little while at the end of the millennium when the Messiah lets go of his reigns. That will be the fifth earthquake and will take place sometime in the 31st century, which will terminate the information found in the book of Revelation when all has been fulfilled. Zechariah indicates that the Messiah's reign on the earth commences likely at the time of the Russian invasion. Zechariah 14:9 states, "And the Lord will be king over the earth on that day. There will be one Lord. His name alone will be worshipped." And the final sentence in the book of Revelation states, "The grace of the Lord Yeshua be with you all." For only one man, notably Yeshua the Messiah, could atone for all the sins by walking perfectly and offering up the acceptable sacrifice of Yahweh. For all men have sinned and fall short of the glory of Yahweh. Thanks for listening to the 4 earthquakes in the book of Revelation. May Yahweh, the true creator of the universe, increase your knowledge and thereby increase your wisdom before the dark clouds and tumult affect our planet. The door to Noah's Ark will soon be closed by Yeshua the Messiah, who will return shortly to implement the remaining prophecies in the ancient prophets and the writings contained in the Revelation before he visits the secret location in northern Saudi Arabia, where Moses brought the original Israelites to judgment. Elijah visited the site, as did the Apostle Paul. Analyze why these developments occurred and you will find yourself on the path to knowledge. The beast will be the religion of Rome, the dragon will be Eastern Orthodoxy, and the false prophet will be he who speaks like God, but is not a God, and has deceived Christendom since the time of Constantine, as evidenced in the first earthquake.